What's up, my beautiful people? And we're going to be talking about probably the sexiest topic on earth, which is how to find your life purpose and doing it with sacred plants, which is kind of a little bit of a taboo subject these days. And if you really want to know why you're here and what this whole life is about, this is just going to be an amazing presentation. We're also going to be talking about releasing the blockages, beliefs, limitations, because it's one thing to know what your purpose is. It's a totally different thing to actually live it. And we're going to be talking about the latter. So let me really quickly tell you who this is for. And I don't know why, but one of my bullet points is showing early. So obviously, if you're interested in sacred plant medicine, you're asking the big questions, want to know who you really are, why you're really here, those kind of really deep, meaningful questions that not everybody in life is asking. And if you're ready to really discover what your why is and build a business you love, the last step we're going to be talking about is serving the world powerfully, doing it in a way where you make a great living, where it's leveraged so you can travel, and using sacred plants to dramatically accelerate your journey forward with that. So here's what you're going to get really quickly. The centerpiece of what we're really talking about today is something called the quantum effect, which will allow you to take a giant leap forward, both in your understanding your purpose and removing everything that stops you from living it, and doing it in a way where it's easy, graceful, where it's fun. And we're going to talk about the number one blockage that stops most high achieving people. And it's not what you think it is. And that's going to be really, really interesting. And then we're going to talk about how to overcome it, because there's a big reason why most people don't actually live their purpose. And then we're going to show you that most of everything you've heard about living your purpose is completely false, total BS, usually started by people who aren't living their purpose, who say things like, oh, just do what you love and the money will find you. And while there is a grain of truth in that, that is completely false. And we're going to show you a much deeper, more holistic understanding of what that is. We're going to show you the 8 things that will allow you to realize that faster so you can actually experience this, live this. And then, of course, we're going to be talking about the last step, which is to build a conscious business that you love, that you can travel, that you can make a great living doing. So let's really quickly. Does this sound like you? Do you feel like you have so much potential to do good in this world, so many gifts to offer, but you're not even sure where you're supposed to start or what you're supposed to do, and you end up just overthinking it, getting overwhelmed? Do you feel like you love to learn lots of things, but you don't necessarily feel like an expert in any one thing? Do you have that just internal feeling like just knowing you were meant for more? Something bigger than that's what's showing up. Do you feel like you're asking the big questions? And if you're here, you may be the only one in your circle asking these questions. Who are we? What are we doing here? What is this life really about? Those are big questions that most people don't ask. Do you know that you would really like to help people, but you don't know what that one gift or that one way you're supposed to show up and how you're supposed to really express your purpose? Do you feel like you're interested in sacred plants, whether it be magic mushrooms or ayahuasca or something like that, that's really become interesting and you feel called, do you feel like you're successful in other people's eyes? When I first did this, I was really successful as a factory worker, and my parents were so happy because I had, health insurance and benefits. But it wasn't really what I was meant to do, and I felt really empty at the core. Do you feel like you're really successful in other people's eyes, but deep down you were meant for something bigger? Do you ever wonder, what is that one thing I'm supposed to be passionate about, that one thing above all others, that I'm finding my one gift? And you frankly just feel like you're different, that most people don't get you, even though you can get most people. Well, if that's you, I have totally good news. None of that's the real problem. So you can do a little science dance with my man, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Kneel with it. I'm pretty proud of that one. That's a good gift. So let me really quickly, I'm going to tell you my story, and we're just going to take 2 minutes, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. I'm going to tell you who I am and why you should listen to me, and I'm going to go over this as quickly as humanly possible. So I had my own sacred plant awakening, started in 2010, and it's probably one of the craziest stories you'll ever hear in your life, and I'm going to give you the really, really short, condensed version, but I ended up drinking ayahuasca on my own, which I don't recommend now that I know without a shaman. That's a horrible, horrible idea in hindsight. And what ended up happening to me is I had a mystical experience with this exact Kleenex box you hear, where it says on it, you can't really see, the camera flash blinded, but it says the words of dreams and inspirations. And I had an experience where the words floated out of me and came into me, and I felt completely inspired. And can't really see it again, the flash blinds it, but it's kind of like a universe galaxy pattern. It became 3-dimensional and became totally inspired as I looked into it. And if the police were around, I probably would have been arrested. And what was really amazing about the story was the next day I became sober, and normal life kicked in. I started seeing these blue butterfly synchronicities everywhere. And so I remember I bought a vegetable tray at the store. My girlfriend asked me to grab one. I didn't even look at it when I threw it in the cart, got it home. It was a blue butterfly. Somebody said, hey, if you're interested in psychedelics, you should listen to this Terence McKenna guy. So I listened to his speech. He's rocking a blue butterfly shirt. And there were 10 to 15, 20 of these every single day. The most interesting of one culminated, by the way, actually, I'll tell you another interesting one really quickly is I remember checking out books on Amazon, got interested in a book about near-death experience. Of course, there's a blue butterfly on the cover, and my girlfriend at the time bought me a video game called Zelda, and in the game I would see these patches of blue butterflies floating in a circle. And why that was so interesting is because in the middle of the game, it's a very normal game for 4 or 5 hours, you're trying to save a princess, then your character gets knocked unconscious and wakes up to a spirit over his bed, and the spirit says, come with me, and brings you to this sacred temple you wouldn't otherwise access, teaches you this sacred medicine song, and then you use it as a gateway point to leave your physical body or to get like super interesting knowledge. And why that was so synchronistic is because that's what actually happened to me in my experience. So this culminated to the 6th time I drank ayahuasca on my own, had a vision of one giant blue butterfly made up of millions and millions of other tiny ones, found out there was a retreat in Peru, went down with the name, their symbol or their logo is actually the blue butterfly, and went down and drank and had my first near-death mystical experience. Have since had 500 of those and have helped many, many people to go through these on their own. So in case you don't know me, really quickly, my name's Frankie Finn. I've had over 500 mystical experiences. I've guided thousands of people through them, and I've used these experiences to help explode people's business, relationship, health, conscious understanding. And it's really the most ancient and powerful art to release anything that stands in your way. So this is going to be really, really exciting. So let's just, without further ado, let's just get really deep into it right now. The number one thing that I think will change your life more than anything and put everything you've ever wanted to know into context is something I call the transcendent mystical experience, which is, this is for some people who don't want to, buy into superstitions, but really, really want to know who are we and what are we really doing here, and are ready to actually experience that. And using sacred plants, by the way, is the fastest and most powerful and proven way I know to do that. So let me tell you really quickly why this is so important and why so many people fail with their life purpose. So here's a question I found online. 1.2K, so like 1,200 or more people. How did you figure out what you want to do with your life? Because I haven't a fucking clue. And most people are walking around with no clue and no real plan and no real strategy to uncover what their purpose is. And so one of the things that comes out of these experiences, you get the deepest clarity of your entire life. You get really clear, focused, because most people struggle because they simply don't know what they want, and they don't have a path or a strategy to get clear about what they want. And so it says here, this is an awesome quote: when you have clarity of intention, the universe conspires with you to make it happen. So that's the first thing, is discovering how it all ties together for you. And I'll show you another reason why people fail, is because at some point they lose their passion and they start looking at society for answers, and society really only has its own agendas, different jobs and things like that. And chances are, if you're watching this, you probably don't neatly fit into somebody else's category. So, maybe I should be a filmmaker, maybe I should draw, maybe I should do this. If you've ever felt like that, where you have all these hidden talents, but you're not really sure the one is that's supposed to fit in, that is actually one of the biggest reasons why people fail at this. So just really quickly, a lot of people ask me, like, what do you see in these kind of experiences if you've never been through one? And I try to grab the best images, the best artists that show you the kinds of things you can see, but also understand experience is deeper than just what you visually see. It's the realizations you have, the feelings that accompany it, the understandings that come with it, the physical sensations, and all of those are present. But this is the best I could give you for a visual of what kind of the divine knowledge and the spirits and the beings you meet in these kind of experiences look like. So this happens to a lot of people. This is a message I got from somebody recently that just said, I'm totally lost. I'm seeking answers that seem impossible to find. Really, obviously, they're frustrated. What is the purpose of this horrible life? I just feel lost. I just want out of this mess. The thing is, I have a lot of great things in my life, but I still feel like this is pointless. What am I here for? Why do I see people suffer? Is this just a game? I just want out, or I just don't get out. If you've ever felt like that at times, where why does suffering have to people? Well, this is going to be really, really interesting for you, this whole presentation, because chances are you're asking the big questions. And I used Homer here. You know what happens to nosy kids who ask too many questions? You probably grew up around people where chances are, not everybody was asking these big kind of questions, or they felt like they're already answered, like, oh, just read the Bible, or just, God doesn't want us to know that until we're dead. And I'm here to tell you that that is completely false. Because most people are either not looking at all, or they're simply looking in the wrong places, which is, different religions or sacred sites or churches or whatever, or the almighty Google, which has a lot of great answers, but Google can't tell you why you're here and what your purpose is all about. So one of the amazing things that happens in these experiences, so you end up releasing expectations. So why do I have a statue with a giant ass boner and some Asian ladies touching it? Because the first time I met the universal intelligence or God or whatever label you want to use, the labels aren't as important as the experience. The first thing is that this infinite intelligence understood me and used my humor. And so the very first thing it did was to make a penis joke with me. And I remember saying, like, God can't make penis jokes. And I remember this infinite intelligence saying, why not? Who do you think invented humor? Who do you think invented penis jokes? And so I think what stands in a lot of people's way is there's a lot of expectations of who this life is and what it's really about that are not based in real universal spiritual truths. They're based on things that society has told us and school has programmed into us. And so we're going to really change that. Now, a big fat warning for you. There is a big, big difference, by the way, and I didn't know this until I actually went through the experience myself. There's a huge difference between ayahuasca and the difference between ayahuasca and a shaman who really knows what they're doing with a clear intention and a proven system. Believe it or not, the second part of that, the shaman, the clear intention, and the proven system, is actually 95% of why these amazing mystical experiences happen. So I've seen these kind of like what I call this California spirituality light, where people drink ayahuasca, and there are some benefits to doing that on their own, but that doesn't mean they're having the real deal, authentic kind of deep experiences that you can have with these mystical experiences. And just to show you how extreme this can be, this is somebody who drank with like a bad shaman, if you will, and who basically felt like their spirit was hijacked and everything is just going totally crazy and they need help, and they're totally lost. These are the kinds of things that can happen. So obviously it's really, really important that you choose the right place and do it in a careful, safe, supported thing, whatever that is for you. Okay, so let's get into probably the most interesting part of this. Now, you'll see I have the word finding your why is total bullshit. Your why is something you create. Life isn't about finding yourself, it's about creating yourself. So what do I mean by that? And why does this apply to you? Well, aha happens about 0.001% of the time. So if you're familiar with the J.K. Rowling story, you've probably heard this before, but I guess when she was coming up with the idea for the Harry Potter book, she was riding a train across England and just had a sudden aha and an instant download, and immediately in her mind's eye she could see these 8 books, and it was as if a light switch turned on, and immediately transcribed this download and went on to become a billionaire through this whole book franchise. That happens some of the time, and most people are waiting for that to happen. But for the rest of us, for the other 99.99999%, is creating your life purpose as a process. And so I have a really awesome quote that illustrates this, is unsuccessful people believe in events, successful people believe in processes. So like an event is like winning the lottery or something amazing happens. It's like a lot of people see a famous athlete, say like LeBron, who is really good at playing basketball, and they say, oh, he must be so lucky. And sure, they have physical gifts and talent, but more than likely there's other tall athletic people who don't have the same gifts because, he probably practices his jump shot 10 hours a day, every day, and works on his game religiously. And so it's a result of that process. Or like, you see a band who has a 3-minute hit song and people say, must be nice to make $1 million for a 3-minute hit song, but nobody sees them practicing and writing music alone in a garage for 10 years. That's the process, the hard work that nobody wants to really talk about. And so there's a way to shortcut this. Now, this is really, really good news for you, because if you've been trying to find your life purpose and for whatever reason it's a little murky and it's not showing up for you, aka if you too still haven't found what you're looking for, it means you just don't know the right process. By the way, very punny, right? You too still haven't found what you're looking for. If you're old enough to get that reference, you're awesome in my books, by the way. So yes, this is the band U2, and they have a hit song called Still Haven't Found What You're Looking For. So that's the joke, in case you didn't get it. So let's talk about how to actually find your why. So how most people normally do it is they wander around kind of blind and lost in life, and the internet, by the way, is a giant pit, easy to get lost in your life goals. So here's one of the questions I always get is my purpose different than everybody else's? And the answer is yes, because you are a unique spirit with unique gifts. So Albert Einstein says, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Now, what's interesting is the process to get to your unique gifts is the same for everybody, but what you discover in that process is completely different and unique to you. So you're not alone in this, by the way. If you've ever struggled with this, I just did a search. There's almost 1 billion web pages for My Life Has No Meaning. There's more than 1 billion. Not too shabby, huh? And I did a search, by the way, on some of the sites. So if you've ever felt like you're lost, this is a very normal thing, and a lot of people have this problem. So I just want you to let you know that you're not struggling with this alone, and that there is a way out. Should I die? My life has no meaning. Like, just look at the number of threads of people. My life has no meaning. I feel bored and empty. My life has no purpose. What's the point of living? So let's talk about the most important thing that will ever change your life on this topic. And this is something I call the quantum effect. And the reason I call it the quantum effect is because it really creates a quantum leap forward in your life, where if you haven't figured out your purpose, you're not living it, you're not necessarily enjoying how you're spending the majority of your days, or however your career is and so forth, this literally creates a quantum effect forward. Now, a lot of people say, hey, just do what you love and the money will follow. And there is some truth, by the way, in the fact. But that alone is not the whole picture. If everyone just did what they loved, there'd probably be a whole lot of people having sex for a living or so forth, or doing something like that, right? So there's 3 really, really key areas, and we're going to talk about these each specifically for a second. But first is, obviously, you got to love what you do. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, how are you going to purposely get up and do it every day? The second thing is you need to actually be great at it. There can be a lot of things you really love to do, but you're not necessarily amazing at it. And then the third thing that everybody really forgets about is the world at large. Does the world really need what you're offering? So, to give you an example why a lot of people are living their life purpose to one in each category. So I know somebody who's an amazing accountant, but they don't necessarily love it, and the world is not waking up and saying, man, where can I find an accountant? There's an abundance of them. So that's not really a purposeful way of living. Now, I've also seen people, as I'm sure you have, where they love to do something. They may love to cook, but they're not really great cooks, and the world doesn't really need another average restaurant, right? So they may not make any money doing that, or make any difference, or have any impact. And then, of course, I see a lot of people do things that maybe they love to do and they're great at, but the world doesn't necessarily need a whole lot of that. So I've seen, like, lawyers, for example, who are really passionate, inspired by the law. In my last business, I worked a lot with lawyers. Some of them actually love to do what they do. They were the minority, and some of them were really great at it, but it was the second most competitive field in the United States, for example. So the world didn't really need another lawyer, especially not another average lawyer who did the same thing as everybody else. So the magic happens when you find where these 3 things overlap, and there's a real beauty in this for you, because it means that these are smaller chunks you can break down your life purpose and look at those sincerely and honestly, and then figure out when you live in this tiny little area where you spend a day doing what you love to do, what you're truly great at and the world really needs is everything just flows really easy. It's easy to make a lot of money. People love what you do. You're great at it. You enjoy a day, and you feel totally inspired as you do it. So let me show you an example. And this is an actual client of ours. Maya recently just booked a TEDx talk, and I don't know if you know what a TEDx talk, but is the most famous speaking platform in the world and the most popular one in the world, and she just booked it. And this is, by the way, something that normally happens is her relationship has upgraded. And it's interesting, I find this effect that a lot of times when people upgrade their life purpose or decide to live it, other areas of their life that are not necessarily what they intended to set out to do just end up getting better. Their health gets better, their relationship gets better, their spirituality deepens, and so forth. So when it comes to being purposeful, one of the things that most people do wrong is they're simply not intentionally thinking, and they're not intentionally living. They're reacting to everything that's happening to them. So there's really two levels to this. There's level one, where you first have to actually know what your path is and get a very clear picture and a vision so you can make a decision to go towards that. And then there's the second level, where it's actually walking your path and actually experiencing that and facing that in a day-to-day. Now, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. 1% of people make that life happen. 33% of people let life happen, and 65% life just happens too. So this alone, choosing to live this path, and why it's so important to have support and community, is because it's so different from how other people live their life. And it's really about being one of those 1% of the people who has a clear focused direction and makes life happen. And when you do that, you will know it, you will walk it. So let me show you what happens when people unintentionally live, and this is a big mistake. Now, this is really, really tragic. I got a message recently, a very near dear friend of mine who, I know all his family and his girlfriend and everybody in his community overdosed on pills and died. And I just can't imagine a mother going through this. He was 35 years old. His name was Jesse. And I only show this example to help anybody out there who is going through a different time or a difficult time, because you don't have to live like Jesse did. Jesse lived his life where life happened to him, and everything was very unintentional living, and just felt bored and never really stepped up and faced his demons. And that's an extreme example of what happens when you unintentionally living. And obviously, thoughts and love and prayers for his family. But this is what happens when you do intentional living. So this is one of our clients, Thomas, and he went through one of our trainings, and he was able to pick up, obviously he's very happy about the money, 100,000 year recurring clients, 2 of them. But deeper than that is, and obviously I didn't show you the whole message, but is actually helping people and doing that in a way where you serve and you're bettering the world, where you feel really good about what you're doing. And of course, my smart ass remark, if he can do it, anybody can do it. But for real, there's a proven process for doing that, for connecting with people and helping people really solve their deep, difficulties in life and problems, and adding value to people's lives. And so that's an example of intentionally living, is figuring out who you really want to serve, how you really want to help them, and then going out there and engaging in meaningful business with them. And of course, this is the upside that can happen, is just like that, picking up 200,000 a year recurring clients. Okay, so let's talk about the thing that stands in the way for most people, and that is themselves, in the form of blockages, limiting beliefs, and limitations. And this is what it really looks like, is when people get stuck in limiting beliefs, is it becomes impossible to take a step forward. And Henry Ford famously said, by the way, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. And so how I see this show up in the form of people is, when people don't live their purpose, they say, hey, I can't live my purpose, or I can't find my purpose because blah, 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 blah. And when I see people who do this right, they start with, in humility, how can I find my purpose without all the things that I don't want? And so the difference between those is, one of those is a limiting statement that tells yourself you can't do it, and one of those opens you up to a question which begins the process of thinking and starts to ask, well, how can I? And it starts simply believing in the possibility that you really can live your purpose, you really can find it, you really can experience it. So I'm going to show you a real life example, limiting belief. This is somebody who messaged me, and it's really sad when I get these kind of messages, and they're really tragic. And I understand, because, I remember what it was like myself to be there, is when you feel like you've fallen so far off your life path, you're not even sure what it is. You just know you're lost. You just know that what's not showing up is not it. And when you become aware of this, what you'll realize is the only thing stopping you from realizing it is you. So this is from Victoria. She said, she liberated herself from some crazy belief, and she was worried about she was going to go through all these imaginary struggles and difficulties, and then realized that there was a way to go around it, that she could just experience what she wanted without having to go through all that difficulty. And so what we're really talking about is your much deeper mind and programming that, because I see this all the time, where The conscious mind is maybe at best 5% of what's going on, and I would suggest it's probably only 1% of what's going on. Most of how you do everything is through repetition and programming. So the way you walk, you don't have to think about it. The way your heart beats, you don't have to think about it. The way you breathe, most of the time, you don't have to think about it. And that is your subconscious. Now, the problem with that is most people are walking around carrying limitations and beliefs and difficulties accumulated from childhood and difficult experiences that are, or even societal programming and the education system that weren't really their own beliefs. So I'll show you an example of what that actually looks like. And I'm not picking on this person specifically, but I have a friend named Shannon, and Shannon looks like the woman in this photo. That was the closest match I could find, probably without the mask and the goofy looking cape. But for the last 3 years, she's been posting on Facebook look at all the healthy things I'm doing. I'm exercising every day. I'm, eating this good food. And the only thing I can think of is that her subconscious and her beliefs and that deeper part of her mind obviously must be in resistance, because she still has, obviously a weight problem that she's struggling with, even though that conscious part of her brain is really excited and motivated. And it's much more important, by the way, to know how to reprogram your subconscious to do what you want than it is to consciously be able to think about things. So when you get this right, it's amazing what happens when you release. So this is Dan, a client of ours who came on one of our retreats, and he recently met with a business deal doing something amazing, which was just kind of mind-boggling for him. A guy rolled up with his Gucci bag, as he says, $10,000, gets out of his McLaren, which if you don't know is $1 million car, and says, I came here to spend money. What's it going to take, right? How much is this going to cost me? And so he's making a great profit. And interestingly enough, before we met, Dan was just out of college thinking about settling for some regular job, working 10 years, getting experiences, putting off whatever his dream was. Maybe he'll find his purpose later. So I wanted to show you that because, this is not somebody who just magically had all the stars aligned. This is somebody who followed that process. And of course, here's another one he posted recently, same guy, about $1,000,000, $500,000 contract that he's getting. And, just understanding people. And one of the things he's mentioning here is the importance of finding the 1% of people in this world that he's really, really meant to help. And whatever that is for you, there's a 1% of people who have a lot of shared values and experiences, and they're basically you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because regardless of where you feel in your journey right now, even if you don't feel like you've figured everything out, there's somebody who's 1,000 steps behind you that would love to be where you are right now. Another one of our clients, just became a published author, had this dream for a long time, and we were able to shortcut that process and do that in a couple of weeks. And they're just, thank you. They're really excited. And so that's what we're really talking about, intentional help. So another really, really, really important shift is to get the best help, because I learned the hard way that doing this whole thing Han Solo and trying to be a hero and face everything yourself is the worst way to do this. Is the shortest way to shortcut any journey and path is to get the best help. And so I wanted to show you a basketball player, Michael Jordan. He says, other than my parents, no one had a bigger influence on my life than Coach Smith. He was more than a coach. He was my mentor, my teacher, my second father. Coach was always there for me whenever I needed him, and I loved him for it in teaching me the game of basketball. He taught me about life. And this is not unique, by the way. You can find this in any profession in the world. If you look at the top actors, the top athletes, the top entrepreneurs, the top investors, they all have mentors, by the way. I found out Warren Buffett, by the way, charges $1 million to consult with him for the day. And there's a lineup of people willing to pay it, but why wouldn't they? Warren Buffett is worth $70 billion or something like that. Something outrageous. And the best people get help. So the reason why I tell you that, because a lot of people feel like, hey, I should be working on my plan B while I figured out my plan A, so I'm going to just do this. And I'm going to tell you that is a losing plan. Plan B, by the way, is what you do when you're building somebody else's plan A. But what's really, really important to realize is, Jim Carrey has this awesome quote which says, you can still fail at plan B, so you might as well go after what you really love. And I'm going to show you what that really, really looks like, because had I not been pushed in this this is what Plan B looked like for me. I was 20 years old. I had got a supervisor job at a factory, which in my little small town is the equivalent of making it. You know, you're in management at a safe, stable job. And my mom was super happy because I had health benefits. And yet I was surrounded by smelly factory workers, breathing in toxic chemicals, people that were often angry and miserable. And that was my plan B. And I figured I would do that while I figured it out. And thankfully, even though I didn't feel very thankful at the time, this is what happened when 2007 and 2008 came around, is thousands and tens of thousands of layoffs. And I watched as people who were working on their plan B often had 22 years and less and saying, hey, I just got a few more years going to retirement, who got laid off. And then I watched a few retire early and then die because, you know, like that's the net effect of breathing in toxic chemicals and living a stressful life for 30 years. So it's really, really important, is a lot of people assess the risk of, hey, if I really go for my dream and my goal, I could fail. But I don't think enough people assess the true risk that you can go after what you don't want and fail in that. You can still go after plan B and lose. So that's really, really important. And there's a really beautiful thing, by the way, that happens. I did a speech in Florida, and the headline speaker was a famous quarterback named Joe Montana, who in the 80s had won more Super Bowls than anybody else who ever played. And his whole message was, the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. And I see people who go through this transformation all the time. And what ends up happening is their existing relationships get better, their health gets better, their spirituality gets better, because when they commit to like finding and living their purpose, something magical happens where the rest of your life starts to follow suit. And as Joe Montana says, the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. And how he said that was, he said, you know, the Super Bowl would come along and there would be all these people trying to get ready and practice their best and get in game shape. And he said, for me, in my mind, I practiced the Super Bowl every single day. So I saw the lights, I saw the crowds, I saw the pressure, I saw all of it. And so by the time the Super Bowl came around, I had already been there 5,000 times in my mind. And it was simply doing what I had learned to do. So the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. And so I think the best thing you can do for yourself in this journey is to get A+ help, because it dramatically shortens this transformation journey. You can do it in 20 years. You can do it in 20 weeks. It's really up to you. How long you want to take. But mentors make this whole thing happen faster. And this is somebody we worked with, Kate, who wanted to help people get out of the corporate rat race as she had escaped herself. And she was helping women to go from these busy family lives and work lives where they're working 80 hours a week, constantly fighting traffic, to having a normal 30-hour lifestyle. And this is what happened as she had her first $25,000 2 weeks. And I think she's up to some absurd amount, which is more of a testament to Kate than how awesome we are. But she's doing multiple hundred thousands per month and doing something she loves and really making a difference in the world and traveling with her family. So I'd show you that to show you the extent of what's possible, because this is somebody who was trapped in a corporate rat race before. So really quickly, just to recap, there were 8 things we talked about, and I want to show them to you visually, is that transcendent mystical experience and the deepest clarity of your life that comes with it, the support of spirits and energetic beings that have the ability to help you remove those blockage, the discovering a purpose by process, and of course, thinking and living intentionally. And then working within your area of mastery, we talked about the quantum effect. When you're in that small little bubble where you do what you love and you're great at it, and it's what the world really needs, you're always in your area of mastery, and that's just an amazing place to be. We're talking about removing blockages and beliefs and intentionally reprogramming your subconscious, and then getting the best help. And that is the process for totally transforming your life from an unpurposeful living to an intentional, purposeful living. Whew. Okay. So that was a lot. And right about now, you have a choice, by the way. Morpheus is handing you red pill, blue pill, and you got a choice to make. You can either take this training and put it in the category of information that you're never going to use, or you can actually apply it to your own life right now and actually step into that purpose and take a very conscious step forward. So I'm going to tell you really quickly about our retreats, because this is what we help people to do and who this is for. So obviously, this is for you if you're ready to take 100% responsibility for your life. There's no other way. If you're healthy enough, you're ready for that quantum leap, you're tired of not knowing and being in the struggle, and you're ready to do something amazing. And of course, if you want to do this in a way where we can help you to do it where you can do it better, faster, easier, with less mistakes, and make the process as a whole more enjoyable, because it doesn't have to be painful to discover what your life purpose is. And this is for you if you're really committed to your realization. So I'm going to tell you really quickly about our transformational retreats. They're a hybrid of magic mushrooms or magic truffles and edible cannabis, which we do with traditional ayahuasca shamanism and lots of cool stuff we've learned along the way in a big ass mansion in the Netherlands. You get an amazing place, a week to spend to really just focus on this and nothing else. And then we have the best tools. We're really the best at the planet at getting you to this kind of clarity in a short period of time, and then giving you all the support and guidance to doing it. Now, these ceremonies that we do are super, super intense. It's like doing 10 years of therapy in a single night. And even if you've done ayahuasca or magic mushrooms and you've never had the guidance of a real shaman, this is a totally different experience. It goes way deeper in a much safer way. Like I said, that's probably a little happier looking than therapy can be, but it really is intense, but it's totally worth it. And it's basically like retuning your being, like the strings of a guitar. If you've ever seen a guitar tuned when it's out of tune, it sounds like shit, plays like shit, getting you back to that state of balance where what you make, comes out as beautiful music out of you. It also, by the way, I say the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. So it helps with a number of things. Anxiety and depression are two of the biggest things that it helped release in me. Anger as well. If you have addictions or addictive behaviors, it helps with that. If you feel like you got that ADD where you're constantly pulled in a number of directions, it helps with that. If you feel like you're constantly reliving trauma or abuse, it helps with that. Obviously, it helps with finding your purpose. That's the whole point. Has the side effect of increasing creativity, productivity. I always see people get their relationships upgraded, whether they find new ones that better serve them or show up better in the existing ones they have to make those better. And of course, develop the kind of leadership, what I call the benevolent alpha, not the kind of leadership where you're bossing people around and you do it by fear and by force, but where you're an inspiring leader, where people just want to become part of your mission and your purpose because you just radiate it. Also includes, by the way, the retreats, organic meals, fresh juices, some cool yoga, meditation, prayers, some breath and body work. We have amazing classes, workshops. And then, of course, we also include coaching and mind maps and community so that you're in this to succeed in the long term, because the only way you're going to succeed at this long term is just with an amazing amount of help and support and guidance that really just goes on for as long as we continue to do this. We also do live music, sound healing, nature hikes, and adventures. And we're building, which is constantly growing, a lifelong community of people who are really living this dream, which just makes it so much easier. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in the community of friends and having people who have your back and support you and make this journey easier, then you're going to want to book a one-on-one clarity call with us. This is totally free, by the way. So there should be a link below this video, but if not, you can go to meetme.so/inspired life. So I'll say that again, meetme.so/inspired life. And what you'll see is a little calendar like this. It lets you pick a day and time. Obviously grab one that works for you. Obviously, if you have any questions, it's an opportunity for you to ask any of those questions. This doesn't obligate you, by the way. So if you're thinking about getting on these calls, it doesn't mean you have to buy a retreat or whatever. Lots of people just have questions and want to get on there. So what we actually do on these calls, by the way, is to help you get the deepest clarity you've ever had in your life, to also identify what's stopping you and to create a clear plan and a vision, because without a vision, you're going to be drowning. With a clear vision, it's going to pull you forward and make this journey so much easier and so much faster. I always compare it to if somebody says, hey, I would love to get away someday, and you say, when, where? And they say, I don't know, somewhere nice. It's going to be really hard to fulfill that because they don't have clear details. But if somebody says, hey, I would love to go to San Diego and be in the sun next weekend, how much are flights? You can actually do that and achieve that. So that clear plan, that clear vision is so valuable and will help you get your clear plan and vision. So if that's for you and you're ready to go on that journey, meetme.so/inspired life, or just click the button below. There should be a button. It brings you to the same place. Grab your calendar spot. And after that, we got a couple of questions just so we can help use our time together wisely, figure out what you're trying to do, and get to know you. So answer those questions because they're really helpful. And that's really all I've got. So if you guys are ready to step into that and take a conscious step forward to live that purposeful business and really show up and serve the world and get paid to do it, whether you have a business now or not, or looking to start one, this is definitely for you. So that's all we got. And may the force be with you. Later, alligators.